Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing okay. Today I'm bringing you my January reading journal update, and it's a bit later than I would have wished to publish it, but first of all I decided to stop publishing videos every 2 weeks, rather have one video a month. But then when the time came to record my voiceover, I was sick and I didn't have a voice, so that's why it's late. I just wanted to explain why I decided to upload less often. It's because when I upload every 2 weeks, I basically spend a week editing and recording the voiceover and editing again, and I spend the next week being happy that I don't have to deal with editing and thinking about the next video I'm going to be editing. So I basically spend all my time, all my brain's powers thinking about editing videos, which I enjoy up to a part, but it robs me of the mental space I need to do other things, namely drawing illustrations for my online shop, writing, finishing the novel I've been trying to finish for several years now. So at the beginning of January, I made a decision to prioritize other things over videos. I realized that you all enjoy my reading journal updates most, so I decided that having one reading journal update a month would be a good compromise. That way I could focus on other things. And since I started prioritizing other things, I wrote more than 12,000 new words for my novel. That's several chapters, so I'm very proud about that. I drew 2 illustrations. I did a shop update, I went to the swimming pool, I went to the gym, I went to read in a cafe, and that was just great. Now the update is over, let's talk about what I'm doing on the video. Before I do my reading journal spreads for January, I have to do my 2025 cover page as well as my January cover page. And if you've watched any of my updates before, you know that I don't like very busy pages with many components, and I was inspired to do that 2025 cover page by, I don't remember her name, but it will be on the screen. I've been following her reading journal updates for a year now, and I just love that she uses scrapbook paper to do her cover pages. The result is super simple, super pleasing to the eye, and I don't have my whole stash of scrapbook paper with me. I didn't take all of it when I moved from France to Canada, but I still have a few pages, and I thought that this moon patterned paper would work well with a January vibe. It looks cold and wintry and I love it. I thought that this lightly patterned blue paper on the right would go well with it, and I needed something way less busy to have my monthly cover page. And like I did for November and December, I'm going to have my January cover page and my February cover page on the same page on the right. So I lettered Janvier, January, on the same piece of scrap paper with the same Crayola super tip, and I fussy cut around it. And I just love how simple it is. You will see me complete that January cover page at the end of the video because I won't add any more decorations. If I had something that would go with the moons, like something from the night sky, stars or moons, I would have maybe added it to the cover page, but I had nothing. So I just decided to have my covers printed and some stats, but you will see this in a little bit. Now, my first review for January is for an audiobook. I listened to the audiobook for the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Marianne Schaefer and Annie Barrows, and that was a mouthful. If I remember correctly, this was the 4th time I was either rereading or listening to that book. The first time I read it was in French when it came out in France, and I just loved it. I remember reading it like in one sitting, in one night. Next, I listened to the French audiobook. The next time I read the original version in English, and this time I listened to the French audiobook once more. And I would have enjoyed listening to the English audiobook, but I didn't have it on my computer. And if you've seen my introductions, if you've seen any of my other videos, I've been enjoying going snowshoeing lately, and I'm in the north of British Columbia. We get amazing snow, so I was enjoying it. And I got into the habit in November and December of listening to an audiobook while I was snowshoeing, and I didn't have anything new to listen to because I refused to buy new audiobooks. They're so expensive. And one of the only audiobooks I had on my computer was the Guernsey Literary Society. in its French version that I got years ago when I borrowed audiobooks from my French library, and there were physical audiobooks you could extract on your computer. So I have a few audiobooks like that, and I thought, well, I might as well listen to it, and I just loved it once more. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society is an epistolary novel, meaning that it's composed of messages, of letters, of telegrams between different characters. The main character is called Juliette, and the story is set after World War II. Juliette is a writer. She's on a literary tour for a book she wrote during the war. And now that the World War II is over, she's touring the country and she's looking for her next project. She ends up receiving a letter from someone from the Guernsey Island, the Channel Islands, and she starts a correspondence with him and with his friends, and we follow how as she discovers what happened on the Channel Islands during World War II, as she starts to get to know the members of this literary circle, and it's such a heartwarming story. It's hard because it's about World War II, but it's such a sweet, soft story. Juliette loves books, and she talks about books with those people. She talks about how books have helped her, and there's so many quotable moments in that novel, and it's sweet. It's not like asinine. It's just, I just love all the characters. I don't know how to explain it. It's just so sweet, and I love an epistolary novel. I love the back and forth. I love having one side of a conversation and having to imagine what initiated that response. I enjoyed learning about World War II in Guernsey, and I've been to Guernsey once a few years back, and I visited Victor Hugo's house when I was there, and I had already read the novel when I visited the island, and it was so special to see the island with my own eyes, and I wish I had been there for more than an afternoon. Yeah, I just couldn't recommend it enough. There's some things that with each rereading or each listening that bug me a little bit. Like in the last part of the novel, there are several subplots, and I feel that if we eliminated a few of them, we could have spent more time with Juliette and with her meeting the different members of the group, and I would have enjoyed that so much. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say against the novel. For the spread, I knew I wanted something very airy, something that would look vintage, because the novel is set in the 40s, 50s. I had printed a few pictures from Guernsey, and I ended up choosing that one on the right side with the yellow flowers and the sea. So because I had the yellow on the picture, I looked through my stickers and found those yellow pressed flower stickers from Journal Say, and I thought I might add more of them on the spread, but I think 2 was enough. For the background paper, I didn't want to print more of my background paper because it's a lot of yellow for my cartridges. I realized that I had those odds and ends left from when I printed background papers for other spreads, and they weren't wide enough to cover the whole pages, so I thought I might as well tear them up so that it looks like I did it on purpose. And I don't like that I lost so much space on the left and the right of those pages, but I think that it ends up looking very nice. I added a quote on the left side of the page with my brown Muji gel pen. Well, that was a car. And I have the information about the novel and about when I read it, the format on the top right page. Title is in my usual black label from my label maker, and I don't have a way to make spaces when I do a label, so I had to cut between every word. And the last thing I did on my spread was to add the number for the pages and add the title of the book in my index. This is something I took from my previous reading journal, which was a long-term reading journal, it was already set up as a reading journal. It had a section for reviews and a section for an index, for other stuff, for lists, etc. I've just been enjoying writing down the title of books in the index so much, and when I go back to look at some reviews sometimes, I really use the index a lot. The next book I'm doing is a book I started reading in December. It's a collection of short stories called Nouvelles du Pérou, News from Peru, or Short Stories from Peru, depending on how you understand nouvelle in French, because it can both mean short story or news. And I think the ambiguity is nice. I decided to read that collection of short stories because I've been doing my Reading the World challenge for several years now, and I had never read anything from Peru. And I've read short story collections from that publisher before. Publisher is called Magellan, and I have enjoyed their Senegal short story collection and their Icelandic one. And when I saw that I could have them on my e-reader, I was really happy. And it was such a nice surprise when I started reading the stories. I love the way some authors are able to create a self-contained universe in so few a sentence and in so few pages, and I just love learning about other countries in that way, because the stories are from different authors, from different periods, about different subjects, and I didn't like all of the stories, but some of them were so moving and they touched on subjects so hard and interesting that I just loved what I was reading. There was one story particularly about what's happening with the Amazon, and I didn't know that such a big part of the Amazon was situated in Peru. And the way the author did that story was just... I still feel for the characters and the universe when I think about that story. And what I wanted to do was not use any background paper for that spread, because it bulks up my journal so much, and I think it's a bit silly for me to not be able to embrace the stark white paper. My previous journal had some cream paper, which I know now is important to me, so that's something I will take into account for my next journal. But I wanted to try to cure myself from it, and I think that after 2 months of trying to work with the white background, I'm more desensitized to it. I realized over the last few months that I love having a frame around my reviews, so I chose a turquoise color out of my Crayola Super Tips to do it, because the colors go well with the little border I printed out of Canva. I wanted a pattern that would tie in with Peru, and I wanted something really bold. So I decided to use that red and blue pattern. I wrote Peru in the title in a red that ties in with that, and I used that border like I would any washi tape. I also printed the cover of the book, a picture of the capital city, Lima, and I added some fern and leaf stickers from Journal Say. I like the tender sap green of them, and I added a sticker around the cover of the book on the left, and because I had not thought about adding those stickers before I stuck down the cover, I had to cut down the sticker to make it look as if it was under the cover. So I had a few bits of sticker left that I used next to the pictures or on the right of the page, and I'm happy I used every little bit that I had. And all in all, this is one of my favorite spreads in this journal so far. Then I went back to my previous reading journal to add to my map for Reading the World, Lire le Monde, the challenge. I used a marker to color in Peru to show that I had read something from it. And it's just so satisfying to color in countries on that map. And I didn't create a new spread for the challenge in my new journal because I still can use my previous journal, and I like finishing what I start in other journals even if I've basically finished the journal. The next spread I'm doing is for The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimelin. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name. She's a native Canadian author, and I saw the title while I was tidying up books at the library because I work in a library. And I was intrigued by that title. It looked like maybe it was a zombie novel, and when I started reading the blurb, that is that after some ecological disasters in the world, people have stopped dreaming, and the one solution they found is to hunt down native people and to steal their marrow to create kind of a serum to make people be able to dream again, because people not being able to dream again makes them unable to really rest, and it drives them insane. So in the normal colonial fashion, they decided to do another genocide, and I started reading the novel and I just loved the style of Dimelin. She has such a poetical style. She uses similes I haven't read before, and sometimes they're a bit hard to understand because they're so unusual, but I just loved reading it. And at the beginning of the month, I wasn't quite sure I would read a lot because I was quite tired, I was sad, and this book really was so nice to read. Obviously, saying that a book was nice to read when it's about people trying to survive a genocide might be a bit weird, but it was so well written, so entertaining might not be the right word, but it's so readable, and I had so many passages I wanted to write down on my spread. In the novel, we follow a character called Frenchie, and at the beginning of the novel, he's a young boy hiding with his brother from the people that want to harvest them. And we follow his journey to try to avoid being taken, and the way he meets other native people trying to go north, trying to find a group of native people that have established a colony or a sanctuary. And I learned so many things reading that book. It was, I would recommend it a lot. If the title looks weird to you, just don't pay attention to the title. Just think that it's really light science fiction, really light post-apocalyptical novel, and it's just a great novel, and it's the first volume in a duology. The next volume is called Hunting by Stars, I think, and I have it borrowed from the library, so I'm excited to get into it soon. For the spread, I wanted something green and earthy that would tie into the nature in the book, because for most of the novel, Frenchie is in the woods trying to survive, trying to learn those survival tricks and those survival skills that have been lost because of colonization. So I wanted to use my fern stickers and to use a cream background, and I bought that old sketchbook from the thrift store. And I thought that it would be a great way to have background that I wouldn't have to print. I didn't cut up the bits at the top where I removed the page from the wire binding, because I think it looks nice. It gives some texture, some interest to the page, and it's as if I had removed paper from a notebook that Frenchie would write in to have my review. For the title, I started to letter it, as you would have seen, but I wasn't happy about it, so I decided to cut a bit of the paper to glue on top and use my label maker to do it, but I didn't end up liking how plain the spread was. Usually I love when something is very simple and streamlined, but this was too simple for me. And I thought about it until February, and I ended up changing the title. But because of the magic of editing, I can show you what I did as soon as I'm finished with the review. For the review, I used my normal fountain pen I got from Action, the discount store you can find in several European countries. And I used my black gel pen from Muji to have my quotes and to have the information about the book in the bottom left hand corner. So usually the information I have are when was the book published, how many pages there are, is the book from the library, is it an ebook, is it an audiobook, when did I start reading it, and when did I finish reading it. What I wanted to do was bring some color and interest to the page, and I knew that I had to cover what I already had on the page, and I could easily remove the labels, but I had written down Shiri Dimelin's name. So what I did was take some dot grid paper I had lying around to letter my title. I chose this beautiful vibrant royal blue from Crayola Supertip to letter my title with basically my own handwriting. And you know the drill by now, I'm going to letter the title and then fussy cut around it. I have in the past used my black gel pen to have a little border around the letters, But I had done that in my first iteration of the title before I glued down the little scrap piece of paper over it, and I didn't like how busy it looked. So this time I only used the felt pen, and I was wondering how to write down the name of the author, so I just decided to write it down under the title in my black gel pen, but I didn't end up liking how it was lettered. I had made a mistake. I used some white tape to cover it. So, I didn't film that's why I'm explaining it. I used my label maker to write down her name and put it under the title, and I really like how it looks like. I think that in the flip through at the end of the video you will see what it actually looks like. The next spread I'm doing is for Apartment Women by Gu Byung-ho. She is a South Korean author, and I'm sorry for the pronunciation, I couldn't find a pronunciation guide for her name. I decided to do just a one-page spread because I was sick. I didn't have a lot to say about the book, and I love doing my one-page spread. I took inspiration from the first one-page spread I did at the beginning of this journal, and I basically did the same layout because I just loved it so much. I had this bit of washi tape already torn because I had done a few pieces for this previous spread and I wanted to use all the pieces I had, so I decided to use it at the bottom of the spread. It looks like the colors look like the one from the cover of the book, so that's why I chose it. I also wanted to use some stickers by Mari Gunasuli, and I mainly use stickers from the freebies I got from my first order with her. And you can find those stickers in different sticker sheets, if I'm not mistaken. So if you like them, just go on her website and see if you couldn't find them. And I'm really happy that I finished this little freebie sticker sheet with that spread. It's very satisfying to me. I did a frame around the spread with a dual tip brush pen in a light purple, even if you can't really see it on camera. I decided to do the title in two different colors of label. I had never used those blue and light lavender color labels because I didn't think it would look good, and I love my black labels. But these colors went so well with the cover and with my whole spread that I couldn't resist, and this started a new passion for colored labels that will continue in this journal. I already had used a few stickers on that sticker sheet, so I had only a few of them left, and I decided to use all of them because the colors went so well with my whole color scheme, and I'm really proud of myself because before I couldn't use cute stickers on my reading journal spreads. I thought they were not adapted to reading journal spread, not serious enough for some reason, but now I can use it and I'm very happy because even if it doesn't go well with the atmosphere of the book, I think that the spread goes super well with the cover of the book, and the washi tape is a scene from the countryside, and the novel is set in the countryside, in the Korean countryside, and I'm just really happy about it. It was so fun to do. It was so quick to do because it was only half the size of a normal spread. At the top of the page, I decided to have the same header I had on previous one-page spread, but I made it smaller so I had more space for my review. I printed the cover later because that day when I wanted to do my review, I didn't have any other covers to print. I didn't want to print at home. I wanted to wait to have a few covers to print to go to the library. So with the magic of editing, you will see it in a few minutes, but it was a few days later actually. And before I started my review, I added a quote in black and I did my review in blue, so we have a nice contrast. So, what is Apartment Women about? This is a 2018 short novella, and it's about a decision from the Korean government to try to have more children because the country is getting old and they're trying to incentivize people to have more children. So they built this building in the middle of the countryside, made the rent very affordable, and wanted people who already had one child to prove they could have children to move in and to promise to try to have at least 3 children to be able to benefit from these low rents and low utilities. And we're following the different families that have first moved into this building. And at first, I really enjoyed it because I haven't read many Korean novels, so it's always interesting to get to learn more about that country's culture. But then it got super frustrating because we mainly follow the women and we see the mental charge they have, how their husbands behave like children, basically saying, I don't know what to do, you have to tell me what to do, I'm a child, treat me like a child. And you're like, oh my god, worst. That's the worst partner ever. It's so infuriating because it's so believable. And I don't like to be so infuriated when I read a book. So it got really frustrating, especially when I thought that the women would never hold their own and make a stand for what they stood for. And I'm glad they did. But it was still very depressing to read. And I would recommend it if you like Korea, if you want to learn more about it. But it was so infuriating to see how the neighbors try to police one another, to make judgments on the way they parented their children, how women who worked outside the house were judged, and how the husbands were so childish, and how believable it was. So, yeah. The next one I'm doing is for a manhwa. It was originally a webtoon and I read it in paper format when we got the new volume in the library. It's volume 9 of The Remarried Empress, and it's not the kind of books I usually show on my channel because I don't read a lot of them, but sometimes reading a webtoon that's just about pretty dresses and the villains being very villainous and the nice people being very nice, it's relaxing. I just love the pretty dresses that don't make sense, the jewels, the balls. I just think it's fun. It's not my favorite webtoon because it takes itself quite seriously, but I still enjoy reading it. And in fact, when I finished reading that volume, I was so stressed about the characters that I went on webtoon to read the next episodes because they haven't been published in paper format yet. The plot of The Remarried Empress is that Navia is an empress in the Western Empire and suddenly her husband takes on a mistress and starts shunning her. He ends up asking for a divorce and she ends up remarrying the emperor from the next empire over. And the first arc of the manhwa is about how she ended up getting divorced, and then we follow her after she got remarried in the other empire. And that's where I'm at in the manhwa. And I'm not spoiling anything because the first chapter of the first volume is us seeing the emperor asking for a divorce and her asking to get remarried. It's always fun to see people outside of Europe trying to do some fantasy inspired by Europe because the names are quite funny. The way they recreate the towns is very idyllic. It reminds me a lot of the town where I did my university years in Strasbourg in the east of France. It's a whole lot of thatched roof and black framed houses and I just love it. It's just all a bit silly, but it's fun. I'm not mad about how cliche everything is. It's just fun to see how people recreate this European atmosphere and inject magic into it, and just reason goes out the window with those books, but it's part of the fun. And for the spread, I wanted to play with my pretty stickers and have some pretty colors that would go with the cover and with the atmosphere. I chose a window, not quite sticker, it's from a sticker pack, but half of these windows are just like they've been laminated and you can't use them as stickers. So I had to use my roller tape to glue them down, which is fine but a bit peculiar. And it's from Journal Say. I used some cherry blossom stickers also from Journal Say to add, and it's more busy than I usually do, but it's just so pretty and shiny that I'm not mad about it at all. And I love doing half spreads when I read manhwa, especially if I only read one volume, because I don't have so much to say about it, especially as it's not a first volume, so I don't have to analyze all of my feelings about how the story is set up. I had done one previous spread in my previous reading journal about volume 1 to 8 or 1 to 7, and I also try to do something very pretty and shiny. For the title, I use those washi stickers that I think are used for labeling files, and I don't ended up liking how it looked like, but I would have loved to have some pink labels to do a title that would mirror the title on the left, but I didn't have pink label and I was trying to not buy it, but I ended up caving. A few days ago I received my pink label and now I have a pretty pink title, but you won't see it in this video. I have one more book I read in January. It was Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells. It's volume 3 in the Murderbot series, but I didn't have time to include the spread in this video, so it will be in the February reading journal update. Now I'm completing my cover page. I printed the covers quite small to have the space to have February at the bottom of the page, and because I had used scrap paper to letter January and 2025, I thought maybe I would use some more scrap paper to add the information I wanted to add. I've realized that in previous cover pages I had added some statistics, some pie charts and stuff, some graphs, but I realized that I didn't care about it. It looked nice, but if it's not at the end of the year, I don't really care about statistics, but I still wanted to have some information. So writing some of them down on this piece of paper was the perfect way to balance my spread, because I didn't have enough covers to have a nice rectangle of covers, and I loved the information I decided to include. I wrote that 4 books were brought from the library, that I listened to 1 audiobook, 1 was a graphic read, and there were 2 favorite books that I read that month. Now, the last part of this video is going to be about my annex. It's a part of the journal that's at the end of the journal. I took it from my previous Lectum journal, and I know some people set up those yearly challenges at the beginning of the journal, but I wanted them at the end so I wouldn't have to think through everything when I started my journal, and I could just add stuff at the end without disturbing the order of the reviews. I did a very simple cover spread with a bit of the scrapbook paper I have used as a cover page for the journal and for the index. I only had that little bit of paper left, so it was only a rectangle, only like a banner on the page, but I think it's fine. And the page I'm setting up right now is a book bingo. And I've been wanting to do a book bingo since I started watching reading journal videos, but I never set it up in my previous journal, so now was the time. I love that I didn't have to think about everything before I started setting up that new journal, and I was able to take my time and just set up my book bingo at the end of January because I wanted to. I wanted to have a very simple book bingo, so I went on Pinterest, saw what people were using in their own book bingos, and decided to take a few ideas from there and adding stuff that would work only for me. For the decoration, I wanted to go super minimal and only use those cherry blossom stickers and have them under the piece of paper I had torn from this piece of tea stain paper. And at first I was really happy about it, but when I came back to the spread to fill in a few of the squares in February, I realized I wanted to have something more busy. And maybe it was because the page on the right was blank at that time and it felt too empty. But I'm really happy with what I ended up doing with the spread, and you will see it in a minute. I found that the pink, and I will use pink to fill in my bingo, was too one-toned. I wanted some more contrast on the page. So I will end up using some Ginkgo leaf stickers that have a nice tender green. For now, I'm using a very small Crayola marker. That's the Color of the World collection. And I didn't know I was buying such small markers when I bought the Color the World collection, because I thought they were just like my other ones. But the colors are so pretty, so neutral, that I'm gonna make do with it. I decided to do a small bingo. I didn't want to have too many squares. I wanted it to be manageable and not stressful. And I chose some quite easy prompts for me. At first I thought I would write the prompts in French because I've been trying to have most of the structure of my journal in French, even if in my review spread I go from French to English without really thinking about it. But the prompts were not coming to me in French really, and translating them made that I had a lot to write in each square because French takes more space than English. And I ended up cutting down another piece of that tea stain paper and gluing it over what I just did to better center what I had done, because I had to cut a lot of words when I was writing it French and I didn't like it. So I glued another piece of paper on top of it, wrote down with a thicker pen and wrote in English. So my prompts are reading outside, read a First Nation author, listening to an audiobook, read a book from my physical TBR, read a book from a new country, that means reading a book that I can add from my Reading the World challenge, reading a book that's part of a series, reading a book in one day, reading a book that's published in 2025, reading a graphic novel, rereading a book, reading a book from my digital TBR, reading a short story collection, reading a book that's more than 400 pages, reading a non-fiction book, reading a middle grade novel, and reading a classic novel. And I was very happy that in January I had fulfilled a lot of the prompts. I read a First Nation author with The Mau Thieves. I listened to an audiobook with the Guernsey Literary Circle. I read a book part of a series that was Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells. I read a graphic novel with The Remarried Empress. And in February I added a few more squares, so I'm really happy about that. And now, just reading the prompts, I realized that I fulfilled another square I had not realized I had. And now I'm adding the other stickers, and I love that because the stickers have a transparent border, I can layer them and it just looks really nice. And I love how the green adds a pop of color to the page, and I'm going to let you enjoy it with a bit of music because this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. As usual, if you've read any of the books I've mentioned in this video, tell me in the comments if you liked it, and if you've read any books that you would think I would enjoy because of what I've showed you, please tell me, because I love getting recommendations of things I would not have thought about. If, for example, you know of a book from a Peruvian author I would enjoy, I would love to know that. Tell me if you're doing a book bingo, because I think that's super fun. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!